Given the stage that you're at, and given the market conditions at the moment, do you think you're perhaps overvalued?
No. Firstly, of course, I'm the CEO of the company. What would I say? But apart from that, we've got the money in the bank. We've made the discovery. I believe we are one of the best risk return opportunities out there.
Hello and welcome to Crux Investor. First of all, thanks so much for watching the video. If you like it, give us a thumbs up. That helps us understand if Asino Resources is the type of company that you want us to spend our time, money and effort on for you. And also, of course, do leave your comments below. It helps us understand the sorts of questions you think we should be asking, how you think we did, and of course, how you think Haya did. You can catch this as a podcast, article, or transcription on cruxinvestor.com. And of course, for our Crux Investor Club members, you get early access to this video. If you haven't already done so, please click the button in the corner of the screen to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And of course, for more videos like this, click the notification bell. We caught up earlier today with Haya Dawn, who is the CEO of Asino Resources. They're TSXV listed gold explorer, now developer, with assets in Namibia. Great conversation. First time we've spoken, or first time we've met. So it's nice to hear the plan. It was even nicer to hear his track record of actually having exited and made investors money. So we talk about what they're going to do with this project, what the opportunities are. Yes, we talk about a little bit of potential M&A as well, but they've got to deliver some numbers and they've got to deliver them soon. We're looking forward to next year when they can also start delivering on some of these studies, PEA, PFS type level. If they want to deliver an accelerated timeframe, they're going to need to do that. So take a look in the description below at some of the topics we discuss. Fairly thorough conversation, enjoyable conversation. Anything interests you in particular, click on the number beside the topic. That's called a timestamp, and I'll jump you to that part of the video. Otherwise, enjoy what Haya has to say. Haya, how are you doing, sir?
Great, thank you. It's great to be on your show.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me.
No, thanks for joining us. So first time we've spoken, first time we've met. People always get me to say, you know, have you got prior relationships with these companies? And say, no, we don't. So you are down in South Africa at the moment. So how are things down there?
Things are pretty stable. I live in Cape Town. I'm a Namibian by descent. Our projects are in Namibia, but because I live in Cape Town, I've got my office here. So we locked down. We're obviously affected by COVID. South Africa's got a big outbreak. But, you know, gold price is high. We fund it. And so I'm pulling the strings by remote control. Got a very good team in Namibia, so it's working fine.
Beautiful. Okay. Yeah, we kind of caught up with someone earlier this week on what's happening down in South Africa. Sounds tough for people, and the government's doing what it can to help out. But what's your sense of how the government's reacted?
I think they're trying their best, but you know the biggest issue is that obviously they don't have the sort of fiscal power that European governments have. So you know the economy is heavily impacted by the lockdown, but there's no relief package from the government, or just a very limited relief package. So I think everyday man in the street is suffering. For us, it's okay because you know for a gold company, the macro environment is good, and also we raise money in hard currency in Canadian dollars. But operating in Namibia, we have the Namibian dollar, which is linked to the South African rand, which is very weak. So we get a lot more bang for our buck. So we're actually in a great position.
You're in a great position. It's well, you know, I hope you guys have come out of that soon. It's always sad to hear what's going on in various countries around the world. Well, look, why don't we kick off with that 1 minute overview of the business, and then we'll pick it up from there.
Okay. So I'm the CEO and founder of a company called Asino Resources Corp. Asino was a gold exploration company active in Namibia. I say was because we are rapidly evolving out of the exploration stage into the development stage. We made a very significant gold discovery, which we announced towards the end of last year. And we have since, in the last 10 months or so, we're doing everything we can to accelerate that discovery, to demonstrate and turn it into an economic gold mine. So it's really exciting times for us.
Yeah, okay. So I think it's worth, for people new to this story, as we are, to maybe go back a bit. Okay, I think you're sitting at 125 million bucks worth of market cap today. The share price has been going up steadily. You know, we've seen companies way ahead of you in terms of where they are on the curve, but not getting those sorts of valuations. You, however, have got a track record that people really buy into and your ability to deliver access. So before we get into what I normally start with is, what's the plan? Can we just talk about that track record, what you have done in the past?
Sure. No, that's a good intro. I appreciate it. Thank you. So I mentioned earlier, I'm a Namibian citizen. I'm a mining engineer. I used to work for, I've built and operated gold mines in a previous life in West Africa and other places. So I know the gold space very well. I really know what works in terms of gold mining. So fast forward a couple of years, in 2009, I became an entrepreneur after many twists and turns, spent some time in finance and other places after having been an engineer. So in 2009, there was a project in Namibia that became available in a bank-run sales process called Otjikoto. At the time, it had about 1.5 million ounces of gold. It was seen to be marginal, and people didn't think it could work. So I came in together with my partners. I recognized its potential, so we acquired it, raised money, did a classic sort of TSX junior mining listing in 2010. Took the company public, drilled the hell out of it. Did various things, basically brought it out into the open to about 2 million ounces, and we ended up selling that project to B2 Gold in 2012 for $200 million. And B2 subsequently went ahead and actually built a very successful gold mine on it. So that was great for us because it demonstrated our thesis. B2 made us look very good because they demonstrated that these type of lower grade gold deposits could be highly profitable. And so that was a nice success. I made some money, but more importantly, I learned how to do it, or how it's done. Had a nice success. So subsequent to that, the markets fell out of bed, so it became very difficult to do anything. So I took another job, did various other things. But then in 2016, I had another breakthrough where I ran a company. It was a turnaround situation in Ecuador, which I ended up selling to Ross Beatty. Ross Beatty is a big Canadian, one of the top Canadian mining investors. And, he was obviously on the other side of the table from me. We negotiated that deal. He took a liking to me in that process, liked my style, and he became my cornerstone investor in this company, Osino. Basically, at the time, I told him my vision, which was, I've done it once in Namibia before. B2 turned my project, which I sold for 200, B2 turned that into $1 billion company. And I think I can do that again. So will you help me? And so that's when Ross came on board. I put up a lot of family money and a lot of my own money, and a lot of my friends and family came in. And then with Ross came a lot of other credible money. So that's basically how we got started. And then Osino, I shall say I'm quite proud, because Osino literally started as a dream. And the dream was it was going to be a consolidation play, put some licenses together, credible management, quality money, and then see if we can make a discovery. Because geologically, we knew that the potential was there to make a discovery, but discoveries aren't made every day. These things usually take many years and lots of capital. And so as Osino, we succeeded in doing that, again, for a number of reasons, but primarily knowing what we're doing, being well-funded, and having dedication and good execution capacity. So we pulled it through, and that culminated in this discovery, which we made last year. Now, you must remember that it was a process from 2016, 15, 16, when we started, all the way to 2019, when we ultimately made the discovery, after having spent about $15 million of risk money. So it's a long journey.
It is.
Now it's very satisfying because I'll just say this: the discovery has been made, and now the company has evolved into something very different.
Okay, thanks for that. And I do want to get into detail, because I do want to back management teams who are competent and know what they're doing and have done it before. I also like to discover whether they did it by accident, by good timing, by good fortune, by planning, or just having the money available to do it. So can I just take you...
All of it.
All of the above, always. Let me take you back, though. Let me take you back to Otjikoto, which is... I make it sound Italian, don't I? I think I do make it sound Italian. Otjikoto. I'm intrigued there about... Someone else had looked at it and thought, this isn't going to go anywhere. But you came and said, actually, based on what I can see potential. So what was it that you saw that they didn't? What was that moment where you go, because most people think, oh, someone's looked at this, it doesn't work, move on to the next thing, right? But was it because that's all that was available, or did you know something that they didn't? What was that moment?
Couple of reasons. I mean, the one thing was it was owned by a company that was actually focused on base metals in the Zambian copper belt, and they had this gold project. So it was clear that they weren't going to give it the attention that it deserves. That was the one thing. The other thing is dogma. Never underestimate dogma. Our industry, and like all industries, are ridden with dogma. And I would say one of my key strengths, amongst a few other things, but one of my key strengths is not to take no for an answer. So I've got, usually when I have conviction in something, I'm not scared to bang the table and to go for it. And that's so in this case, it was pretty simple. I used just good mine planning expertise that I had built up at Anglo Gold. I took the existing resource model that was there. I gave it to some consultants. I said, can you reevaluate this for me with this operating philosophy in mind, and could that work? And they said, yes, it could work. So it was literally that simple. The dogma, I just want to come back to quickly, because this is very important to what Osino does now. And that is, in those days, people were not that familiar yet, or some people weren't that familiar with these high tonnage, lower grade deposits. Especially a lot of your retail investors possibly listening to your show, a lot of the Canadians, they love these epithermal, low tonnage, high grade, next pop, share price shoots, we can trade. This is not it. This is large tonnage, continuous, but lower grade. However, very profitably mined and much more likely to actually become a gold mine because of the continuous disseminated nature. So that's a technical aspect. And, me having mined these type of deposits before as a mining engineer for Anglo, obviously I had the conviction. So, and then there were other things like Namibia is at that stage wasn't seen to be a gold jurisdiction. It only had one other gold mine. It just didn't have any track record. And that's changed now with the success that B2 have had with that gold mine. So I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does answer the question. But then you can then sort of segue over to Chile, the other side of the world. I know you sold that to Lumina Gold, and again that was another kind of moment for you, because tell me about the project first, because I will get on to Ross. Ross has been on this show. We've heard his story. We've had the Lumina Group on here, so we understand a little bit. But why did you go all the way to South America when you're an expert in Africa?
To be honest, I was doing all of that from this very same room that I'm sitting in right now. The beauty of our business is that sort of strategic management of junior mining companies can be done from just about anywhere, because it's largely, you work with consultants, with banks, with brokers. You travel a lot, but you can be anywhere. So, but to answer the question, the reason I got into that was I was just being opportunistic, because one of the shareholders that made money on that B2 Gold deal on us was a large shareholder in this Ecuadorian company. And it was in the downturn 2015 when they ran out of options. They had a problematic CEO, and they needed somebody that understands what's going on, that can deliver a turnaround. And so I just took the job. And for a couple of reasons, there were some unique aspects. It only took a year and a half, and it ended in the sale to Ross. But more or less in parallel, I started putting Osino together, which I went back to then.
So, okay, but tell me about these couple of unique problems, because I like problem solvers. I want to back people who can solve problems, because mining's not easy. Mining's tough. Things happen. So when you go and do a turnaround, what were the things that you were equipped to do that the previous CEO wasn't?
I think, the one thing is credibility. It's obviously hugely important. And I mean, Ross will back me out, and Ross would confirm this if he was sitting here. They only looked at that company because I was the CEO. They wouldn't have looked at it otherwise. So personal credibility is key. Obviously, the good old values, honesty, integrity, all the good stuff. I would say that is a key aspect. Another aspect is ability to execute. It's a high-flying term for just getting shit done. Excuse my language. And I'm very good at that. I'm very good at crossing the T's, dotting the I's. I guess it's my German heritage. I tend to be thorough, detail-oriented. I make sure that stuff gets done. And I would say, you asked me earlier what have been the ingredients of the success in Osino, from getting it to a dream to $120 million market cap. probably the largest aspect is execution, because that's stuff that you can control. The markets and all that stuff is also important, but you can't control it. So I tend to focus on the things that I can control, which very clearly in my case is execution. And living in Cape Town, close to where the assets are, etc., helps me in that. Sorry, I got sidetracked now, but yeah, that's a key aspect. So,
okay. So there was no sort of Hirschsprung technique. There's no aspect to in terms of a technical component that you had to solve. It was literally just joining the dots. Is that what you're saying?
No, neither. It's always, there are many, many aspects. There was actually, this is a great question. Thank you for asking it. There was a unique technical challenge that we solved in Namibia, which we are very proud about, which also was a major factor. And that was exploration through cover. I mean, everybody knows that in today's world, most of the big deposits that are exposed out in the open have been found. So therefore, any new stuff will either be found in very difficult jurisdictions like the Stands or Russia or complicated places like that, or in the jungle, or undercover. And now Namibia, if you look at it, Namibia is largely undercover. It's covered by desert sand. And although it is so accessible, sort of physically accessible, and it's so easy to operate there, it is actually totally underexplored or even unexplored because of the cover. And the cover in Namibia is a sand layer of about 20 meters, 10 to 20 meters, that covers just about everything. Not everything, but most areas. So we applied, first step, what I did is I found two very credible geologists that have a perfect combination of innovation and experience and ability to deliver. And those guys came up with a conceptual exploration model. I had the money with Ross and others, and I have enough self-confidence and experience that I could trust those geos, and I took a view on them and I said, okay, carry out a long-term, large-scale exploration program, which they did. And as part of that, they looked to Australia to find solutions for exploring through cover, because it has been done elsewhere before, so we didn't invent it. We just applied these Western Australian techniques to the Namibian situation because, it's climatologically, it's very similar. So basically, just in a nutshell, when you have a lot of evaporation, you have groundwater that percolates upwards and it carries with it minute quantities of gold, which precipitate out near the top. And the Western Australians and the CSIRO, a research organization over there, in the last 20 years came up with assay techniques to analyze down to minute quantities. And that resulted in some significant discoveries in Western Australia. And all we did is we imported those techniques, we applied it to Namibia, and it worked. And so by the beginning of last year or so, using these techniques, we delineated a very large surface expression of a gold system through this cover, 15-kilometer system, which we call the Twin Hills system. And we then followed it up with multiple rounds of drilling, and it ultimately resulted in this discovery, which is completely undercover, completely blind, which we are drilling now.
Okay, so I know you're going to talk to me in a minute about you just raised some money, $17.1 million. You're going to tell me what you did with that, but I just want to come back to this Ross Beaty moment. It's important. He's backing you, the man. He likes your style, like what you did. Okay, but you still got to sell. He's not going to pump money into something which isn't going to work. So, what was how long was that conversation in terms of, here's what I think I've got, Ross. I'm a good guy. I've made you some money, or we've all made each other some money. Here's what I've got today, and here's how I'm going to convert that into value and dollars for you. What was that conversation? That could save us all a lot of time, right?
It took 6 months, to be honest, because that deal that I negotiated with his group on the sale of my company at that time, which became Lumina Gold, which, by the way, I'm still on the board of, it was an extremely complicated transaction that took us probably almost a year to complete. 6 months of intensive negotiations, etc. So you can imagine in that process, we got to know each other intimately. And, obviously, a relationship like that you don't take lightly. So I didn't ask him on day one whether he would invest in my new company. I asked him that after the other deal had closed and everything was done and dusted. And then the conversation automatically came to, what are you doing next? And I was already on the road And I said, "What? Don't you want to participate?" And so at that point, it was a very, very quick conversation. I mean, Ross is always a tough negotiator. So he negotiated me down. He made me issue warrants and various other things that I didn't want to do. But I wasn't entirely reliant on him either, because I mean, this is a key lesson I just want to bring in here. One of the other key aspects that I've paid attention to in every deal I've done is to diversify my sources of funding, not to be reliant on one single funder, not even Ross Beatty. And so at that time, that gives you strength. And I think Ross thrives on that. If you come to Ross with your tail between your legs, you won't get anything. So you have to face him. I did that, and so yeah. Anyway,
no, that's a fair point. I'm just trying to I'm building up a point system here of how do you go about building this and protecting your own shareholders, not putting your company in a position where it's dependent on someone else or something else. In this case, money or individuals. But he did raise the awareness of this because there's a cult of Ross Beatty, people who will only invest in Ross Beatty projects, right? And that's fine. It's fair enough for some people's strategy. So he kind of did raise the awareness for you, which helped, and the money helped because some companies struggle to raise the capital to actually get things going, and it kind of slingshots you through the kind of painful exploration process. Now you've gone and raised some more money. Now, what are you going to do with it?
Did you say I have to or I have?
You have. It says here.
No, we have. Yes,
oversubscribed, 17.7 million.
Exactly.
Bought deal.
No. I just clarify. So just to finish off on Ross, and then I'll come on to the new financing.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right. Ross gave us credibility, and we were able to raise the $10 million of risk money in a dead market that we used to bring us to this point. So absolutely, and with him came other quality institutional money that supported us and so forth. So that's what Ross did for us. Of course, once we made the discovery, which was towards the end of last year, it de-risked our company substantially from a technical perspective, because all of a sudden we weren't just a dream with some quality money behind it anymore, but we were now a real project with a significant footprint. And at that point, it opened us up to a different audience, a more institutional type of audience. So we did our first real institutional raise in January of this year, where we raised about $15 million or so. And that really set us free. Most people at that time thought that that was going to be it for a while, and it would have been enough for a while. But you asked me earlier about the ingredients of success, and one of those is also prudency. So when I saw this mining market heating up in the last couple of months, and I just saw one financing after the other, and our share price was performing, I felt it was prudent to take some more and make sure that we funded well into the development phase, not taking things for granted. And that's why we did it. I mean, there were quite a few skeptics who said maybe we took too much or we shouldn't have done it, but I'm very confident that it was the right thing. And so, yeah, we got about $25 million in the bank now. We've got significant warrants that are in the money, and we can do whatever we want to do in terms of ramping up the project and executing to get it to the mining stage.
Okay. Namibia, we know Namibia through a few uranium companies operating in country, and it's tough at the moment there as well. The government's had to make some decisions, and they've had restricted mining operations. How's it affected you?
Yeah, it's very tough, primarily because of tourism. Namibia is heavily dependent on tourism. So again, fiscally speaking, for the economy, socioeconomically, it's very complicated for them. The mining industry has sort of plodded through. So yes, they had some restrictions, the operators. We locked down for about 6 weeks. So basically, we just stopped our drill programs from about March to May. And then in May, we started up again. And we are basically on full tilt. We have 4 drill rigs drilling at the same time. And we are looking to add more rigs and ramp up our activities more. I guess the difficulty that we have is that we can't travel there. I can't go there and visit my own operations because of the international travel restrictions. But we are fortunate in that we've got a very credible Namibian team who are operating quite happily. So, yeah, so it hasn't affected us much. but we are waiting sorely to be able to travel there again.
Okay, so given the amount of money that you've got, and you've got four drill rigs running at the moment, what are you working towards? Because again, when I look through the presentation, you do talk about your experience and track record. You've got some nice names there, nice shareholders. You've got reasonable institutional coverage now, as you say. But there's not a lot of meaningful data compiled together to tell the story of what it is that you've got and what you're going to do. So when's that coming?
Yeah, thank you. It's good criticism, fair criticism. I guess one of the reasons it isn't there is because of 43101, the Canadian Stock Exchange Code, which is very prescriptive on what you are allowed to talk about on project and economic information. So therefore, I'm allowed to paraphrase, but I can't give you exact numbers. But in a nutshell, we used to be an exploration company. We made the discovery, and we are now developing that discovery as fast as we can into an operating gold mine. Now, that process that I'm talking about is that's a 2 to 4 year timeline, and we are right in the beginning of that timeline. And there are a couple of steps that we have to follow in order to do that. Firstly, we have to define an economic resource. So that's step number one. And the plan is to put that out early next year, with a bit of luck, maybe this year, but I don't want to promise. And the idea is, we're fairly confident that, and this is also, I think, why our market cap is where it is, we are going to put out a substantial initial resource, in the, who knows, I don't want to mention numbers, but it's going to be between 1 and 2 million ounces, hopefully closer to 2 million ounces type of thing. So it's a resource that is of similar scale and look and size to the other two operating gold mines in Namibia. The B2Gold one, which produces 150,000 ounces a year. So it's a typical sort of tier 2 type of open pit operation. That's our target. That's where we want to go. Our discovery promises or indicates this, that it certainly shows the potential to achieve that. So that's first, the initial resource. At the same time, ongoing exploration to make it bigger and better. And then at the same time, in parallel with this, somewhat offset, is to do a PEA. A PEA is a Canadian term. It's a preliminary economic assessment. It's basically a pre-feasibility study, but you have to do it if you're going to speak about economics on a project. And you can do as many of these as you like. Typically, operators usually explore, build a large resource, and then later they do a PEA. I'm going to accelerate all of that because we want to put the project on the map, and we want to show the true potential that it has. So that's what we're doing in the next 6 to 12 months. Beyond that, it's a full-on development timeline. Then, assuming that the resource is big enough and assuming that the economic numbers in the PEA are good enough, you would then look to do detailed feasibility studies, financing, start of construction, and actually getting into mining. Now, when I spoke about a 2 to 4 year timeline, so resource PEA is the first year, second year financing, detailed feasibility studies, commencement of construction maybe, and third year, fourth year construction and operation. So I think in 3 or 4 years' time, there's a good chance that there might be an operating gold mine here. Now, of course, many other things could happen in the meantime from a corporate perspective. There's M&A, there's all sorts of stuff that can happen that we're positioning ourselves for. But I think that's a different angle.
Meaning what? I want to know what I'm getting into here. So I know you have built mines with some big companies before, but your recent history is taking them through to a stage where you're taken out, right? You're seeking that. Are you seeking that again here? Is this the cookie cutter approach, or do you genuinely want to get into production?
I think, a lot of people ask me that, and it sounds too glib sometimes to say, oh no, we'll just sell out, because it's actually not about that. It's ultimately about shareholder value. And as a CEO, of course, I've got personal interests. I've got interests as a Namibian citizen, et cetera, and they all converge. But ultimately, my role is to deliver shareholder value in the best way possible. And shareholder value is not just returns, it's also risks. So that's why, you alluded to, I've sold some companies in the past, and I think I did the right thing. Like B2Gold is the best example. I don't think in 2012, if we had stuck with that project, we would have gone down, likely would have gone down in flames with the rest of the gold mining market. Maybe we would have lost the project, who knows? We sold it at the right time to B2Gold, who took on all that project risk and all the financing risk, and they built a very successful gold mine. Yes, we left some value on the table. That comes with the territory. Now, I'm just painting a picture here. I can't answer your question directly. I cannot say, yes, we definitely want to sell the company. I think we want to deliver shareholder value. And I do believe that the best way to achieve that is at the appropriate time, which is probably closer, once we've delineated the true potential of what we have through exploration and through technical studies. And once it therefore gets to the construction stage, I think that is an appropriate time to look for senior partners that have production expertise, that are well financed, etc. So I think it's possible that outcome that you're painting, that it will happen. Okay. But it's, you never know. If we have to, we will construct and operate.
Okay. It's a great gold environment at the moment. I mean, never been better for gold companies. Given the stage that you're at, and given the market conditions at the moment, I mean, do you think you're perhaps overvalued?
No. Firstly, of course, I'm the CEO of the company. What would I say? But apart from that, I'll tell you very simply why I don't think we are overvalued. We sold. You're an ex-banker, so you've seen the comp tables, etc., and that's what you should look at. I mean, obviously, it all depends on your valuation methodology. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But if you consider advanced exploration development companies like we are, what they trade for, and you look at the reasonable comps for us, companies, I don't know if your listeners know these companies like Tietto Resources in Ivory Coast, or Roscan in Mali, or Oklo. All these companies are well-run, well-financed, successful explorers/developers that have a range of valuations. Now, if you compare us to them, our valuation is reasonable. I think our Achilles heel at the moment, which is probably why you say what you said, is the fact that we don't have a resource art. People see us as just an exploration company. And we cannot talk about this resource, which we are working towards, because we haven't done it yet, and we're constricted by 43-101. And that's why I am accelerating and going hell for leather on our drilling to get that resource out as fast as I can. But in doing so, I will only do it if it is substantial, because otherwise you shoot yourself in the foot. But I think if you and I talk again in 6 months' time, and we have a substantial resource out, and you apply our current market cap to that, let's pick a number. Let's say 2 million ounces. Let's say I'm not saying it will, but let's say 2 million ounces is by next year we will have that as a maiden resource, which would be a great achievement. I'm not saying we will achieve that. And you apply our current market cap, that's $50 an ounce. That's half of what we sold Otjikoto to B2Gold for. And that was 10 years ago in a descending gold environment with no track record. All of that is better now, better gold market, much more track record. Namibia has got track record. So I think we should easily achieve the valuation multiple of $100, $150 an ounce at the resource stage. Once you get to production, of course, those multiples go up. Now, these numbers that I'm giving you is like 2 times our current market cap. So I believe, actually, let me just make this point, which I think is a key point in terms of the value that Osino offers as an investment opportunity. I believe we are one of the best risk-return opportunities out there, because I think the key risks in junior exploration, financing, discovery, i.e. technical, and management, have all been mitigated. So we got the money in the bank, we've made the discovery. What we're doing now is largely a mechanical process, ticking the boxes, drilling the holes. So therefore we are totally de-risked, and we've got significant upside opportunity through delivering this project and turning it into a feasible gold mine. And there are other factors. We haven't even spoken about the sort of M&A environment that's unfolding in Namibia. But yeah, so I think we're in a great position. I'm not promising a 10-bagger, but I think the likelihood of us delivering on the plans that I've outlined is very high. and that's going to be that will be reflected in share price.
Which is brilliant. You're good at joining the dots. You told me you were, so it should be nice and easy, right? But I'm interested in the M&A component because Ross Beatty said to me that when he was on the show, he said, Pan American Silver, last big bet he's going to make. Okay, so he's not going to be building up the next big thing in Africa with you. It sounds like to me. So with him or without him, do you think you've got the credibility to go and raise more capital for M&A in the market? I get in the very positive bull environment like this, everything's getting financed, but is that a conversation you seriously want to have? Is that something you want to take on before you've really got this company established on, the Twin Hill projects?
To be honest, no, because I like to stick to my knitting, and I think building companies and creating things as we've done with Osino, that's my core competence, and I'm good at it, and I know I focus on the things that are under my control. However, we're in a unique situation in Namibia because we are right next to an operating gold mine, which has many very interesting attributes, but it is owned by a group of people that want to sell it. So that mine, it's going to be that mine. Yeah, it's a couple of hundred. Anyway. Let me not.
It's dollars.
I'll get there.
It'll cost dollars. Right?
Yeah, it's dollars. It's an open pit gold mine that Anglo used to own. That's been in production for 30 years. That's got a large resource endowment. It's got 4 or 5 million ounces left. It's in production. It has a couple of issues. It's been starved of capital for a long time, and it's got absentee parents, so it needs a new owner. Now that mine is 20 kilometers away from our Twin Hills discovery. Excuse me. So there are obvious, glaring operational synergies where we have growth, they have established infrastructure, and. So I think putting us and them together is just such an obvious case of 1 + 1 is going to be substantially more than 2. Not just operating synergies, also re-rating. When I spoke to you earlier about the valuation of our ounces, that's just on a standalone basis. But if you look at other examples that are out there, successful deals, like for example, Teranga bought that Massawa project from Barrick some time ago, and Teranga, the share price, tripled or quadrupled subsequently. So there was a substantial re-rate that took place. Now that re-rating is value that could accrue to shareholders. Now, as Osino, I would prefer for someone else to do all that hard lifting, and for us to just keep on exploring, delivering an excellent project. But I'm not sure I'm going to have that luxury, and that's why when this M&A happens, we're going to be part of that in some shape or form, either as an acquirer or being acquired or in a JV or whatever. We are hopefully going to be the kingmaker in all of this. And we are positioning ourselves for that. And that is, it has mostly opportunity, but it also has some threats, obviously, because, if you're an exploration investor, do you all of a sudden want to be turned into operational turnaround, etc.? So it's not all a silver bullet or a slam dunk, but it is downside protection for investors because it's highly likely that this M&A, specifically in our neighborhood, is going to come.
It is going to come. And I think your shareholders and people interested in you want to know what part you're going to play, because you're 125 million market cap, Canadian market cap company, right? So that's not even real money. So the acquisition is significantly, or so the JV, we're talking about significantly more dollars than that, right? And I do get it. People are talking about it, but they want to understand it's all well and good saying we're going to be the kingmakers, but why aren't you leading from the front and saying, well, actually, we will manage this entire process? Where are you? What can you tell me?
Yeah, obviously, this is highly speculative because at the moment the process hasn't even started.
Correct.
And we believe that it will start at some stage. We don't know exactly when, but personally, I'm interested to buy time because the more time I have to put a resource on the book and a PEA and get the share price up and so forth, the better positioned I am. So that's the first aspect. However, this is an aspect that we cannot control because the owners will decide themselves when to sell. And I think considering that we're at record gold prices, I could imagine it will be soon. probably soon after the lockdown restrictions have been lifted. Now, how will we act then? Obviously, this is a public forum, I can't tell you, but there are many permutations possible. We could seek partners. We could try to do it ourselves. We could set up a new co, which Osino will merely participate in, and that new co could be led by Ross Beattie and I. I'm not suggesting anything. This is just me. I cannot speak on behalf of Ross. I'm just painting a picture here of us being in a beautiful position where we've got all the options in the world. We just, if we decide to, we can also just sit there and keep delivering, and the deal will come to us. But that's not in my nature. I tend to be more proactive than that. So I think for now that's all I can say. But it's a very interesting aspect of the whole evolution of that gold mining district where we are in the center of.
It is. Okay.
And what you need to bear in mind is if you take a step back and look at the combined package would have something approaching 5-6 million ounces of gold resources. It would have all the infrastructure in place in a brilliant jurisdiction like Namibia. And you can apply your own valuation metrics to that. That's substantial value, and that's why I do think this is a very interesting deal that one should pursue.
Yeah, I mean, I know you wouldn't talk about it if you weren't serious about it, because obviously the impact on your stock, if it doesn't come off, would be extremely negative. So I do appreciate you're serious about it.
Can I correct you there? I wouldn't say so, because when I say one should pursue, I'm not saying that Osino should pursue it. Remember, I'm a Namibian citizen, ex-Anglo. I used to be there. I could have different hats, but I would not do anything that's prejudicial to Osino. It goes without saying. So whichever way one would do this, it would be advantageous for Osino. But I don't think that our valuation has a built-in M&A factor. I do think that it is downside protection to some extent, but if the deal doesn't happen, if somebody else, like for example a Chinese entity, Chinese tend to be very active these days, if they end up buying that mine and outbidding us, because one thing we won't do is sort of compete on price. So that's possible, and then but then it's still going to be good for Osino, because I think it's highly likely, it looks like the resource that we are going to be delivering at the end of this year likely is going to be better than what's remaining at Novichok. So whoever ends up owning Novichok would want to own us. So whichever way it goes, it will end up being positive for Osino.
Okay, great. Thanks for clarifying your position. Can you talk to me about, just before we finish, because I've really, really enjoyed learning, getting an idea of how you think and how you operate. I really appreciate it. Can you talk to me about assays and metallurgy? And what do you know about what you've got under the ground there?
No, you see, I'm very conscious of the fact I promised people results some time ago already, and we haven't delivered, mainly because there've been some logistical issues. So yes, drill results are imminent. Next few weeks there will be significant drill results. Metallurgical test work has been positive. We haven't put it out because we're already busy with the next phase. So again, in the next week or so, we'll put something out on metallurgical test work, which generally it's been no issues. It's actually quite positive. But more excitingly is the progress that we've made. We've actually, in fact, I can say it. We've appointed a very well-known engineering group that's going to do a substantial follow-on metallurgical test work program that's actually already kicked off. So we'll report that too. And then also imminently, hopefully next week, we'll put out some news on ongoing exploration and an IP survey, which has yielded some very interesting results that we are very excited about. So it's going to be quite a detailed press release on ongoing exploration and ramping up of activities that we are planning.
Beautiful. That's really good news, and I'll tell you why. Because again, there's some conversation around. Sometimes the games that are played in the industry. Assay results are promised, metallurgy is promised, and then it goes silent because they're fundraising, and it usually indicates that the results aren't going to be what they should be. It might spoil the fundraise. But here you're saying we should expect good news around the metallurgy.
Yeah, the difficulty is I'd love to report results as we receive them. But the problem is that it's in the interpretation of those results. And what we've seen in the past is that people often misinterpret results. The market is very greedy. They only like good results and excellent results. And that's why it's actually from a company perspective, the prudent approach is to report in significant batches, because then you just see things in perspective. And that's what we want to do. So that's why we waited a bit, just because we wanted to get a nice spread of results across the area where we're drilling, and we're waiting for a few additional ones, and then we'll put them out. But no, nothing strange.
Hiya. Good man. Really enjoyed this. Thank you very much. Loved hearing about Osino, what you're doing. I like the track record, your planning ahead, and the optionality that you may have on M&A. We shall see what that turns out to look like. Thank you very much for your time. When you do have news, pick up the phone, let us know, okay?
Okay, will do. Thank you for the opportunity of being on your show. Thank you.